Victor Hayes, a man accustomed to power and success, arrived home earlier than usual, his mind clouded with the weight of his responsibilities. The rain tapped against the windows of his sleek black car as he pulled into the driveway of his lavish home. His mansion, nestled in an affluent neighborhood, seemed strangely quiet, almost eerie. With no one around, he decided to take a brief walk to clear his head. The cold air on his face felt refreshing, a temporary escape from the suffocating world he had built. He didn't expect what was about to unfold just steps from his front door. As Victor wandered down the familiar path, his gaze was drawn to a figure huddled on the corner, barely visible under the flickering streetlights. His heart skipped when he realized it was Emma, his wife, kneeling on the cold pavement, her clothes torn and dirty. She was pleading for food from passers-by, her voice breaking as desperation painted her face. For a moment, he stood frozen, unable to process what his eyes were seeing. Emma, the woman he had once known, was now a shadow of herself, trapped in a world of anguish he couldn't understand. What had happened to her? Victor's mind raced, trying to make sense of the horrifying image in front of him. He called out her name, hoping it would snap her back to reality, but she didn't respond. There was no recognition in her eyes, only a vacant, frightened expression. It was as though the woman he loved had been replaced by someone else entirely. As he approached her, his heart pounded in his chest, but the closer he got, the more she seemed to recoil. The fear in her eyes was palpable. Without saying a word, she scrambled to her feet and vanished into the night, disappearing into the crowd of oblivious pedestrians. Victor stood there in disbelief, the storm within him now matching the downpour above. What had led Emma to such a state? This was not the woman he had married, the woman who had everything anyone could desire: wealth, security, love. His mind couldn't wrap itself around the reality of the situation. The confusion gnawed at him, and for the first time in years, Victor felt helpless. The questions swirled in his mind, each one more troubling than the last. How had she ended up like this? Why didn't she tell him? What had she been hiding from him all this time? Shaken, Victor walked back to his mansion, but the warmth of his home now felt foreign to him. The place that had once been a sanctuary was now suffocating. The images of Emma begging for food and the look of terror in her eyes replayed in his mind like an endless loop. He couldn't bring himself to go inside just yet. He needed answers, but the truth seemed elusive. How could this have happened under his nose? What was Emma involved in, and why hadn't she reached out to him for help? A storm had just begun, and it wasn't just the rain outside that would shake his world. The mystery of Emma's downfall consumed Victor. Each unanswered question fueled his anxiety and curiosity. He knew he had to find out what had caused this drastic change, but something told him that the truth, when revealed, would be far darker than he could ever imagine. There was more to the story than just financial ruin or personal failure. The fact that Emma had not recognized him, had not sought him out, told him that there was something far more sinister behind her behavior. And as he stood there, the weight of his next move pressed down on him. He was about to embark on a journey that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his wife and the life they had built together. Victor returned home that evening, his mind still reeling from the disturbing scene he had witnessed. The quietness of his mansion, once a place of comfort, now felt hollow. The luxury of his surroundings did nothing to ease the turmoil inside him. His eyes scanned the empty halls as he walked through the house, the silence growing unbearable. The cold marble floors seemed to echo with every step, a stark contrast to the warmth he once shared with Emma. What had happened to the woman he had married? The woman he thought he knew? He needed answers. But as he sat in his study, his thoughts drifted back to the early days of their relationship when things seemed perfect. Emma had always been a sophisticated woman, someone who exuded grace and poise. Their life together had been marked by beautiful moments, exotic vacations, dinner parties, and intimate nights spent talking about their dreams. She was everything he had ever wanted, a woman who fit perfectly into his world of success. But as the years passed, the distance between them had grown. It wasn't that they fought or argued, it was the silence that slowly filled the gaps. Their conversations became fewer, their interactions more mechanical. At first, he chalked it up to the pressures of his career, but now, as he looked back, he wondered if Emma had always been hiding something. In the beginning, their love had felt effortless. Victor remembered the spark in her eyes when they first met, the way she made him feel like the most important person in the world. He had always admired her intelligence, her wit, and her ability to navigate their high society circles with ease. But as time went on, something changed. Emma became more distant, more guarded. It was subtle at first, an offhand comment here, a reluctance to share details there, but it grew. Victor had been so caught up in his own ambitions, in building his empire, that he didn't see the cracks forming in their marriage. But now, those cracks seemed undeniable. Victor's thoughts were interrupted when he glanced at a folder on his desk. It was a collection of documents that had been in the back of his mind since his return. They were papers he had found scattered across Emma's things in their home office. Contracts, credit statements, and what appeared to be correspondence with a man named Damien, a name he didn't recognize. The documents were vague, but one thing stood out. Emma had been carrying a debt for years, one that Victor had no knowledge of. He'd always assumed their finances were stable, but this discovery suggested otherwise. The debt was substantial, and its origins were unclear. How could she have kept this from him? Why hadn't she confided in him? Victor couldn't shake the unease that gripped him as he flipped through the papers. There were references to meetings with people he didn't know, names he had never heard. The further he read, the more questions arose. There were mentions of large sums of money being exchanged, but no clear indication of what the purpose was. Had Emma been involved in something illegal? Was she hiding it from him because of shame, or was there something more sinister at play? The thought that his wife might have been living a double life began to gnaw at him. The woman he loved could have been hiding much darker secrets than he was prepared to face. The more Victor pondered the situation, the more his mind spun with possibilities. He had to know what was going on, but he wasn't sure where to start. The documents gave him a glimpse into Emma's world, but they didn't tell the full story. Who was Damien? What was his role in all of this? Why had Emma gotten herself involved with someone like him? The questions continued to mount, and with each one, the tension in his chest grew. He had to find Emma. He had to confront her, get answers. He couldn't let the mystery fester, not when everything he knew about his life and marriage was now in question. As the night wore on, Victor's resolve hardened. He couldn't let this mystery consume him without answers. He knew he had to track Emma down. She had to know that he wasn't going to back down. Whatever secret she had kept from him, whatever dark world she had become entangled in, he would get to the bottom of it. He couldn't stand the thought of his wife, the woman he had built his life with, being involved in something so dangerous and hidden. But as he set his mind on finding her, he realized that the answers he was seeking might lead him to a place he wasn't ready to go. The weight of the mystery pressed down on him, and for the first time, Victor felt like he was standing at the edge of something much larger than he had ever imagined. His wife's fall from grace wasn't just about a financial misstep or a moment of weakness. It was something deeper, darker. He'd always believed that their life together was built on trust, but now that foundation was crumbling beneath him. As Victor prepared to search for Emma, a single thought echoed in his mind. The truth he was about to uncover could destroy everything, but he had no choice but to face it. Victor sat in his car outside the cafe, staring blankly at the door. The rain had stopped, but the chill in the air matched the coldness in his heart. He had arranged to meet Ryan, an old friend of Emma's who, according to the sparse information he'd gathered, might have answers. Ryan had always been a bit of a mystery to Victor, charming, with an air of confidence that veiled his questionable business dealings. But Emma had been close to him at one point, and now Victor needed every bit of information he could get. He wasn't sure what to expect, but the gnawing feeling in his gut told him this conversation would change everything. When Ryan finally arrived, he greeted Victor with a smile, but there was something guarded in his eyes. The man's handshake was firm, but his demeanor suggested he was walking a fine line. He had always been easy to talk to, a skill honed over years of making deals and rubbing elbows with the right people. They sat down, and Victor didn't waste time. "I need to know what's going on with Emma," he said, his voice low but firm. "She's in deep, and I don't understand how it got this bad." "What happened?" Ryan hesitated, the smile fading as he shifted in his chair, clearly reluctant to share the truth. Ryan finally spoke, his voice quieter now. "You don't know the whole story, do you?" he asked, eyes flickering as if searching for a way to break the news. He took a deep breath, leaning in. "Emma had some debts she couldn't get out of. She tried to keep it from you, but she was in over her head." Ryan paused, watching Victor closely. "She made a deal with the wrong people. The kind of people who don't take no for an answer. You have no idea how bad it got, Victor. She thought she could fix it on her own, but they don't play fair." Victor's mind raced as the pieces started to come together, but Ryan's words raised even more questions. Victor's grip tightened on the table, his knuckles white. "What do you mean by, they don't play fair? Who are these people?" His voice was urgent, the panic rising in his chest. The realization that Emma had been hiding something from him all this time was bad enough, but now it seemed like she had gotten involved with dangerous individuals. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, clearly reluctant to get into specifics. "I can't say too much. You're not going to like it," he warned, "but let's just say the people she got involved with are dangerous. It's not just about money, it's a lot more complicated than that." The pieces didn't fit together. Victor had always seen Emma as strong, independent, someone who could handle her own. Yet here she was, caught in a web of deceit and manipulation. Why hadn't she told him the truth? Why hadn't she come to him for help? The silence between them felt heavy, and Victor's mind was filled with images of Emma, his wife, the woman he had trusted, falling deeper into a world he didn't even know existed. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than just financial struggles. Something darker, something sinister was lurking beneath the surface. Ryan's gaze softened, sensing Victor's turmoil. "She didn't tell you because she thought she could fix it. She didn't want to drag you into this mess. But the truth is, once she was in, there was no way out. You think you know someone, but sometimes people do things out of desperation." Victor's mind reeled. Desperation. It wasn't like Emma to act out of desperation. She had always been the one with the plan, the one who thought things through. Was she really this vulnerable? Or had someone close to her, manipulated her into this? The more he thought about it, the more he suspected there was another player in the game. Victor's thoughts returned to Damien, the name that had appeared in the documents he had found. Was he the one who had entangled Emma in this mess? The feeling in Victor's gut told him that Damien was more than just an innocent bystander. The connection between Emma and Damien had to run deeper than just business. Had he been the one pulling the strings all along? The realization hit him like a punch to the stomach. If Damien had been behind Emma's downfall, the situation was far worse than he had imagined. But how far did this go? How many people were involved in Emma's downfall? The more Victor pressed Ryan for answers, the more the story unraveled. But the more Ryan shared, the more it seemed like Emma's involvement wasn't just a matter of bad luck. It was the result of manipulation, coercion, and deceit. It was clear now. Someone had used Emma's vulnerabilities against her, drawing her deeper into a world she didn't understand. Who could she trust? Why hadn't she told Victor the truth? The questions piled on top of each other, and the tension between them grew. One thing was certain. The mystery wasn't over yet. It was only just beginning, and Victor was determined to find out who was behind it all, no matter what it took. Ryan stood up, giving Victor a long look before walking away. The words echoed in Victor's mind long after he left. Someone had used Emma. Someone had been pulling the strings. The danger wasn't just financial, it was personal, and the stakes were higher than ever. He had to find Emma, confront her, and get to the bottom of this before it was too late. The deeper he dug, the more he realized that Emma had been trapped in a game she never signed up for, and now he was in it too. Victor knew he couldn't let this go any longer. The more he learned, the deeper the hole seemed to get. Ryan's words haunted him, and the image of Emma begging on the street lingered in his mind. He had to find the answers. No more hiding, no more running from the truth. The next day, he decided to investigate further. He couldn't rely on anyone else to solve this. He had to do it himself. The first step was to return to the place where he had seen Emma. Something told him that the answers lay in the streets, in the places she had frequented, in the shadows where no one else dared to look. As he walked through the area, Victor's eyes scanned every corner, hoping to find something that would lead him to Emma. He had no idea where to start, but his instincts guided him to a dilapidated building that looked like it had once been a vibrant community center. The sign was faded, but the atmosphere felt off, like something was hiding in plain sight. He stepped inside cautiously, feeling the weight of uncertainty with every footstep. What he found there shook him to his core. The building was filled with people, disguised as volunteers, but Victor could see it clearly now. They were manipulating the vulnerable, using the guise of charity to lure people into their web. The room was filled with families and individuals who seemed to have nowhere else to turn, but Victor could see the coercion in their eyes. The volunteers who should have been helping were taking advantage of the desperate. They weren't offering real assistance. They were creating dependence, drawing people in with promises of food, shelter, and support, only to later bind them with hidden debts and obligations. It was a sickening operation, one that used people's vulnerabilities against them. He hadn't expected this. It was worse than he had imagined. Was Emma one of these people, caught up in the network without knowing how to escape? Victor's heart raced as he pieced everything together. The more he looked around, the more he realized the full extent of the operation. This wasn't just a local scam, it was a network, a system built on exploitation and deceit. And at the heart of it all, Victor's suspicions grew clearer. The person he least expected was behind it all. Damien, his former business partner. Damien had always been the smooth talker, the one with the ideas, but Victor had never seen this side of him. The man he had trusted and worked with for years was connected to this network of financial trafficking. Victor couldn't believe it. Damien had become part of something so corrupt, so dangerous. But why? The discovery hit Victor like a punch to the gut. Damien wasn't just a distant figure in the background of his life. He was directly involved in the mess that had ensnared Emma. Damien's ties to the network were undeniable, but Victor had no proof, nothing tangible to confront him with. All he had were suspicions, a gut feeling that screamed at him, but suspicions wouldn't be enough to take down someone like Damien. He knew how to cover his tracks. He had always been a master manipulator. To expose Damien, Victor would need hard evidence, something concrete to bring him down. Victor spent hours searching the building, trying to gather any information he could. He felt like he was walking through a maze, but with each step, he uncovered more about Damien's involvement. Emma's name kept appearing in the documents and contracts scattered around the building. It was clear now that she had been drawn into this web by someone who knew how to take advantage of her weaknesses. The deeper Victor dug, the more he realized that Emma wasn't just another victim. She had been targeted, groomed even, by someone who understood how to manipulate her trust. That someone was Damien. The more Victor uncovered, the more dangerous this investigation became. The network was bigger than he had thought, and the people involved were not to be underestimated. He couldn't do this alone. He needed help, but trust was hard to come by. Ryan had already given him information, but Victor wasn't sure how far he could rely on him. Damien had a way of turning people to his side, and Victor wasn't about to let himself be another pawn in his game. The clock was ticking. He had to act fast before Damien found out that he was onto him. As Victor left the building, a sense of urgency filled him. The weight of what he had uncovered pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had to make a choice: confront Damien directly, or find another way to expose him without putting himself or Emma in further danger. The tension was rising, and Victor knew that the only way to bring this to an end was to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The enemy was no longer just a shadow in the background. It was someone he once trusted. And now, Victor was determined to stop him. But the question remained: how far was Damien willing to go to protect his secrets? And how much was Victor willing to risk to uncover the truth? Victor had spent days tracking down the elusive pieces of the puzzle, but nothing had prepared him for the confrontation that was about to take place. Emma was sitting in their living room when he entered, her eyes still red from the tears she had shed, though she tried to hide it. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as he stood in front of her. The woman he loved was sitting there, a mere shadow of herself, and he could sense that the truth was just on the edge of being revealed. But how much of the truth was she ready to admit? "Emma," he began, his voice steady but edged with frustration. "I know about the debts, about Damien. I know you've been hiding something from me." He watched her closely, waiting for her to break. But she just looked down, her hands fidgeting nervously. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence between them. The weight of the years they had spent together seemed to hang in the air like a heavy fog. Victor's heart was pounding, but he kept his composure, knowing this was the moment they both had to face. He needed to hear it from her, and he needed the truth. Emma's voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. "I didn't want you to know. I was ashamed." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with pain. "I thought if I could handle it myself, I wouldn't drag you into this. I didn't want to disappoint you." Her words were soft, but the guilt behind them was undeniable. Victor could see the weight of her admission, but something in his gut told him there was still more. She hadn't yet revealed everything, and he knew it. The past few weeks had shown him that there was much more to this story than she was willing to admit. Victor took a step closer to her, his voice firm. "You should have told me, Emma. We could have figured it out together, but you shut me out. Why?" His frustration was building, but he kept his emotions in check. He wanted to understand, but the secrecy between them had broken something deep inside him. "What happened with Damien? Tell me the whole truth, please." There was a long pause before Emma finally spoke again, her voice trembling slightly as she confessed something that Victor wasn't ready for. "I made a deal with him," Emma admitted, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of regret and fear. "I thought I could handle it. He offered me a way out of the debt. He said he could help me, but I didn't realize what he was really doing. He's been manipulating me from the start." Her words hit Victor like a slap in the face. The man he had once trusted, Damien, had been behind it all. Emma had been caught in a web of lies and deceit, and now Victor had to face the bitter reality that Damien had been playing them both. The betrayal stung, but it wasn't just Damien's fault. Emma had kept all of this from him, and now he had to come to terms with the fact that she had been lying to him for months. Victor's mind raced as the pieces fell into place. How did he do it, Emma? How did he get you to trust him? He felt a wave of anger and confusion wash over him. Damien had always been smooth, charismatic, able to manipulate people into doing his bidding without them even realizing it. But Emma, she was strong, intelligent. How had she fallen victim to him? The question burned in his mind, but he could see the answer in Emma's eyes. She had been vulnerable, desperate, and Damien had known exactly how to exploit that. "I thought he was helping me," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "He told me he could make the debts disappear, that I could start over, that everything would be fine. He said he understood my situation. He knew how to get me out. I was foolish to believe him. I should have known better." Her regret was palpable, and Victor could feel the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. But it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the trust they had shared. The life they had built together, that trust had been shattered, and now Victor had to decide whether or not he could rebuild it. Victor stood there, conflicted, his emotions swirling inside him. The anger he felt toward Damien was clear, but there was also a deep hurt, a betrayal from the woman he had loved for so long. She had kept this secret from him, and now their entire relationship seemed to be built on lies. He didn't know how to move forward. Could he trust her again? Could he forgive her? The questions raced through his mind, but there were no easy answers. Emma looked up at him, her face pleading. "Victor, I am so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't know what else to do." Her voice cracked, and Victor could see the vulnerability in her eyes. But even as she pleaded, something inside him shifted. It wasn't just about the lies or the debts. It was about the way he had let her keep these secrets for so long. He had failed her as a partner, just as much as she had failed him. The truth was more complicated than he had imagined, and now he had to decide whether he was willing to fight for the woman he had once loved, or whether it was too late for them. Victor knew that the only way to take down Damien and put an end to the network that had ensnared Emma was to hit back hard. He needed to strategize. The thought of confronting Damien head-on was too dangerous without solid backing. So, he began to reach out to old business contacts, people from his past who owed him favors or had the power and resources to help. Each conversation was a calculated step, but Victor knew that time was running out. The more he thought about Emma, the more urgent the situation became. He couldn't let her fall deeper into this web of deceit. The plan to expose Damien's empire had to be flawless. Victor spent long hours on the phone, reaching out to influential figures who had connections in the financial world. These were people he had once worked with, trusted, and even helped along the way. Now, he needed their expertise, their networks, and their muscle to take down Damien. Some agreed without hesitation, knowing Victor's reputation and how much he could offer. Others needed persuasion. But as the pieces of the plan fell into place, Victor could feel the momentum building. The network was vast, but if they worked together, they could bring it down from the inside. The foundation of his attack was now set, but there was still much to do. Then, as if fate had aligned, Victor received a message from Sophia, a former colleague who had worked with him on several high-profile deals in the past. She had always been sharp, ambitious, and well-connected, someone Victor respected in the business world. Sophia had heard about what was going on with Damien and had crucial information about his operations. Her message was clear. She wanted to help, and she had insights that could lead to Damien's downfall. Victor's instincts told him to trust her, but something in the back of his mind made him hesitate. He knew this was a game of trust, and the stakes were too high to take chances. But with no time to waste, he arranged to meet her. When Sophia arrived at his office, she seemed poised and confident, but there was an edge to her that Victor couldn't ignore. She spoke with authority, explaining how Damien had built his empire on illegal financial schemes, manipulating both the rich and the poor. Her information was valuable, but as they spoke, Victor noticed something unsettling in her demeanor. There was a sense of urgency in her voice that didn't quite match the calmness of her appearance. She was offering Victor the key to dismantling Damien's operations, but something about the way she presented herself felt off. Could it be that Sophia was simply eager to be involved, or was she hiding something? Despite his suspicions, Victor couldn't afford to waste time on doubts. He needed to act quickly, and Sophia's information seemed like the missing piece to the puzzle. She knew about Damien's financial dealings, his connections with corrupt politicians, and the way he manipulated the system for his own gain. It was exactly the kind of intel Victor needed to expose Damien to the authorities. But even as he absorbed her words, Victor couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. She had a way of steering the conversation, of deflecting any questions about her own involvement with Damien's circle. The more Victor listened, the more questions piled up in his mind. What was she not telling him? As the day wore on, Victor found himself tangled in a web of plans, meetings, and strategies. He was focused on the task at hand, but Sophia's behavior continued to unsettle him. She was too smooth, too eager to jump in and offer solutions without fully explaining her own connections. At one point, when he asked about her past dealings with Damien, she quickly changed the subject, brushing off his question with a smile. It was a subtle move, but it made Victor wonder, was she as trustworthy as she seemed? Or was she playing him for her own benefit? He needed answers, but he couldn't afford to waste any more time. Despite the nagging feeling in the back of his mind, Victor continued to push forward with the plan. The next step was crucial. He needed to gather concrete evidence of Damien's crimes, and Sophia was the one who had the access to make it happen. They worked through the night, analyzing documents, hacking into secure networks, and reaching out to trusted contacts who could help with surveillance. As the hours passed, Victor felt the weight of the plan settling in. This was it. This was his chance to take down Damien and expose the truth. But as the pieces fell into place, the question still lingered. Was Sophia truly on his side, or was she leading him into a trap? The tension between Victor and his new ally was palpable, but there was no turning back now. As the plan took shape, Victor couldn't afford to second-guess himself. He had to trust that the allies he had gathered, Sophia included, were truly there to help him. But deep down, he knew that the game was far from over. The more he uncovered, the more complex the situation became. It was clear now that Damien was not just a businessman, he was a master manipulator, and Victor was only beginning to realize just how deep the deception went. With every move, Victor felt the weight of the stakes, knowing that one wrong step could destroy everything. The tension had reached its breaking point. Victor stood in front of the luxurious mansion, his heart racing as he prepared for the final confrontation. He had spent weeks gathering evidence, rallying allies, and preparing for this moment. Damien's empire of manipulation had grown too powerful to ignore, and now the time had come to face him. As Victor's hand gripped the door handle, a sense of unease gnawed at him. He had a plan, but the unpredictability of Emma's involvement made him question everything. She had been his ally, but now he wasn't sure where her loyalties truly lay. Was she the same woman who had once been his partner, or had she become part of Damien's game? The moment Emma stepped into the room, everything shifted. She walked in with a quiet confidence, her posture straight, her eyes focused. Victor had expected her to be fragile, broken from everything she had been through, but instead she seemed stronger than ever. She didn't look like the woman who had begged for food on the streets, the woman who had been caught in a web of debts and lies. The woman standing before him was someone entirely different, someone who had taken control of her own destiny. As she faced Damien, there was no sign of fear, no hesitation in her movements. This wasn't the same person who had been desperate for a way out. "I know everything," Emma said, her voice steady and unwavering as she addressed Damien. She turned to Victor, her gaze meeting his with a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I've been a fool. I allowed myself to be manipulated by Damien, but I'm done hiding the truth. Everything he's done, every deal, every lie, it's all out in the open now. I won't let him destroy any more lives." Victor watched her, stunned. He had never expected her to be the one to step forward and take charge. For the first time in their relationship, it seemed as though Emma had found the strength to break free from the chains that had bound her. But what did this mean for their future? Was she truly on his side? Victor's mind was racing, trying to make sense of the situation. He had always believed that he was the one who would bring Damien down, that he had the power to dismantle his empire. But Emma's words hit him hard. She had known more than he realized, had been involved deeper than he could have imagined. As the conversation progressed, it became clear that Emma was no longer just a victim in this story. She had become a player in her own right. She wasn't just trying to escape from Damien's grip, she was taking the reins. She had a plan of her own. To Victor's disbelief, Emma made a bold move. She struck a deal with Damien. "I'll help you dismantle your empire, Damien," she said, her voice calm and calculated. "But in return, you will return the money to the victims you've exploited. You will destroy the network you've built. You'll end your reign of manipulation, or I will make sure the authorities are on your doorstep before you even know what hit you." Damien's expression shifted as he processed her words. It was a shocking turn of events. Emma wasn't the helpless woman Victor had thought she was. She had played her cards wisely, positioning herself as both an ally and a threat to Damien at the same time. Victor's stomach dropped as he realized what Emma was doing. She wasn't just trying to tear down Damien's empire, she was making sure the victims were compensated for everything they had lost. This was her redemption, her way of making up for the mistakes she had made. But was she truly on his side? As Emma spoke with Damien, negotiating the terms of the deal, Victor couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a dangerous game. Was this the right move? Was she still the woman he had once loved, or had she become something else entirely? The lines between loyalty and betrayal blurred in that moment, and Victor wasn't sure which way the scales would tip. The audience was left hanging, unsure of how this final confrontation would end. Was Emma genuinely on Victor's side, or was she still playing both sides to her advantage? The tension in the room was unbearable, and the stakes had never been higher. The clock was ticking, and every move made by Emma, Damien, and Victor could change the outcome of this battle. For Victor, this was not just a fight for justice, it was a fight for his future with Emma and the trust they had once shared. Would they come out of this stronger, or would the damage be too much to repair? The final showdown was inevitable, and all that remained was to see who would emerge victorious. The air in the room was thick with anticipation as Emma and Victor stood side by side, facing Damien for what would be the final time. They had spent days carefully planning, gathering evidence, and positioning themselves to take him down. But as Emma stood there, her eyes burning with determination, something in Victor shifted. He had expected a dramatic, explosive showdown, a moment where everything would collapse around Damien. But Emma had other plans. Instead of taking Damien down herself, she chose to expose him to the world, to let the weight of his actions be revealed to the public. The final revelation stunned everyone. Damien's empire of manipulation and deceit was no longer a hidden secret. It was out in the open for the world to see. Damien's face twisted in shock and anger as the details of his criminal activities were laid bare. Emma had carefully orchestrated his downfall, ensuring that his network of lies and manipulation would crumble without resorting to violence or destruction. It wasn't the end Victor had expected, but it was the right one. They had delivered the final blow to Damien, but instead of watching him fall, they allowed the justice system to take its course. It was a bold move, one that would have far-reaching consequences. Damien's empire was destroyed, not by force, but by the power of truth and exposure. Emma had proven herself to be much stronger than anyone had ever realized, including Victor. As the dust settled, Emma and Victor stood in the aftermath of the battle they had fought together. Their lives had been turned upside down, and the road to recovery was long, but they had come out the other side stronger and more united than ever. The challenges they had faced had forced them to confront their deepest fears, their darkest secrets, and their greatest vulnerabilities. And through it all, they had discovered something crucial: the importance of trust. It wasn't the money or the material wealth that mattered. It was the trust they had in each other that had carried them through. They had rebuilt their lives not just by overcoming adversity, but by learning how to rely on each other once again. Victor looked at Emma, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and love. She had taken control of her destiny, confronted her past, and emerged victorious, not through revenge or destruction, but through courage, intelligence, and a willingness to change. The woman standing before him was someone he barely recognized, and yet she was the woman he had always loved. Their relationship had been tested in ways they never imagined, but it had been strengthened by the truth and the choices they had made together. They had faced the darkness and come out into the light, their bond now unbreakable. The lessons learned during this journey were profound. Money, Victor realized, was important, but it was not the ultimate power. True power came from the choices we make, especially in times of adversity. It came from the trust we place in others and the willingness to do what is right, even when the path forward is unclear. The people they had become in the face of hardship were far more valuable than anything money could buy. They had found a new sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of what it meant to live a meaningful life, and that was something no one could take away from them. As they stood together, watching as the world outside began to return to its usual rhythm, Emma and Victor knew that their journey wasn't over. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but they faced it with newfound strength and a deeper connection than ever before. They had fought for each other, for the truth and for justice, and in the end, they had won. The final resolution, though unexpected, was satisfying. It wasn't about defeating Damien. It was about understanding the power of trust, love, and the choices that defined their lives. The story ended not with destruction, but with a promise that together they could face anything the future had in store.